Hello, and welcome to Africa, this enormous and astonishing continent. South Africa, to be more precise, just a short drive outside Johannesburg. And I'm here to talk to a remarkable man, Credo Mutwa. When I first came to South Africa about 18 months ago, within 2 or 3 days, I was introduced to Credo Mutwa. I'd never heard of him at the time, but from the moment I met him, I didn't stop listening and he didn't stop talking for at least 5 hours. And within the first few minutes, I realized I wasn't just in the presence here of a man of great knowledge, and he's certainly that. I was in the presence of a genius, a unique human being. And Credo Mutwa is without doubt the most incredible man it has been my honor to meet. Credo is what some people around the world call a shaman, and some deeply, deeply ignorant people call a witch doctor. And to give him his official title, he's a Sanusi in the Zulu nation. Sanusi is the carrier, the keeper of the ancient knowledge of so much, including the ancient knowledge of history of Africa, where all this came from, where the people came from, what the truth of history is, instead of the largely nonsensical version of history that we get through the universities and the schools from very, very well-educated professors who know. There are only 2 Sanusis left in South Africa. Credo is one. And that's terrifying, because it means the true version of the history of this continent is green. Being lost to this official nonsense that we're told is history, but it's absolute garbage. History has been rewritten, and the people who can put that history together again are going out of this world as they age and are not replaced. So you're about to have, as I have, the enormous privilege of hearing this man talk and seeing his knowledge preserved for as long as the electronic medium exists. He is the official storyteller and keeper of the history, the knowledge of the Zulu people. But you know, knowledge is a very dangerous thing when you're trying to hold people down into a mind prison. You're trying to manipulate them. You're trying to control them. And so people like Credo Mutwa, who have the knowledge to rewrite history and therefore rewrite the present, they are very dangerous people to those that wish to control and suppress. This man has had endless threats to his life, endless attempts on his life, right up to the last few days. And he has upset the hierarchy of his own people as much as he's upset those others in other cultures and other races that wish also to suppress the truth for reasons of preserving their own religious domination or keeping people in ignorance. And so I've come here to talk to Credo at length about many things. And this is a series of unique videos with a unique man. And what we're going to start out with is to concentrate on a bizarre story. An off-the-wall story, you would think, but one which he is confirming at every turn from his own background, his own unique knowledge of this continent. Over the last few years, as I've been trying to uncover how the world's controlled by a few people, which it is, and who those people are, it has emerged from my research that, bizarre as it may seem, a reptilian race from another world, interbred with humanity in the far ancient world, creating hybrid crossbreed bloodlines. You see references to these in the Old Testament and into endless of the ancient texts in the Old Testament. It talks about the sons of God, which in the original is sons of the gods, plural, interbreeding with the daughters of men to create the hybrid race, the Nephilim. These gods were the literal gods of the ancient people. And they used to sacrifice people literally to the gods. And these crossbreed bloodlines, as ancient accounts tell around the world, were put into the positions of ruling royal power in the ancient world. And then, as is happening today, when you do the genealogy of the ruling families and the ruling positions of power in the world, be they the 42 presidents of the United States up to Bill Clinton, be they the British royal family, be the aristocracy of Europe, any of these key ruling elites, the top of the banking system, the top of the global business system, you hit the family lines which go back to these same ruling lines of the ancient world, royal lines, that the ancient accounts say were the crossbreeds between humanity and these reptilian gods. In other words, a reptilian extraterrestrial race has been controlling planet Earth for thousands of years to this day and putting its genetic compatible bloodlines into the positions of power as presidents, prime ministers, banking leaders, business leaders, etc. And this explains so many things. Where we get the divine right of kings from, the divine right to rule because of the bloodline, the genetics. Why these ruling families of the aristocracy and the royal families have always incessantly interbred with each other, just as the Eastern establishment families of the United States do, that produce so many presidents and banking leaders and administrators of government in the United States. And astonishingly, bizarre as I keep saying, and seemingly ridiculous as this story may be from our conditioned perspective of life and reality, when I started talking to Credo Mutwa from his African experience and knowledge of the most staggering depth and variety, he tells exactly the same story that I have uncovered around the world, exactly in great detail. And if Africa and the world is ever going to be free, and we are, then they have to listen to this man. They have to listen now. I started out by talking to Credo about the origin of the knowledge that he is about to share with us for the first time in so many cases. Because this is the knowledge that only initiates normally get. But as Credo says, the world needs to know this. And so, this is a unique video. And this is a unique man. And like I say, I asked him first about the origin of the knowledge that he's about to pass on.
When the white man started destroying our religion, when he started demonizing our gods, when he started ridiculing what we believed in and actually using educated Africans to destroy that ancient African religion, in many parts of Africa, say, our ancient religion went underground. And there were, call them secret societies, all over South Africa and Central Africa and East Africa and West Africa, where this knowledge was stored and kept by aging guardians, many of whom did not know that in other parts of the land there were other guardians who were doing exactly as they were doing. Now, when I first became a Sangom, I was already, say, a person of education. I had entered school as a child of 14 years. And when I became a Sangoma, I was a youth of 16 years. And what my aunt and my grandfather, as well as my maternal grandmother, taught me shook me to the core of my soul. I found that the mission schools had been teaching me lies about my people all along. Missionaries had told us as children that the only light came to Africa with white people, that before the white men came, we black people had no idea about God. We had no belief in a life after death, and that our people were just a race of savages who used to lie around in the sun, womanize, fight, and drink beer every day. I was suddenly awakened to the fact that Africans had in fact been far greater intellectually than the missionaries were willing to give them credit for. That, like the white man, we had astrology, astronomy, we had surgery. In fact, I found that Zulu surgeons in the early years of the 19th century and the 18th century and even beyond could perform operations which white surgeons were not capable of operating. And the more I learned about my people, the more I wanted to learn. And when my initiation under my aunt Mina and my grandfather Zigo had ended, I wanted to know more and more and more. And sometimes I had to pay a ghastly price in order to gain this knowledge. In one place, here in the northwestern Transvaal, my teachers found that I was really uncircumcised. And they told me bluntly that if I wanted to be a member of this secret society, I had to undergo circumcision. And I did, and it was screamingly painful, I assure you, because it was done with a clasp knife, which somebody must have blunted a little bit, just to make sure that I got the message.
I had the same done, but I was asleep at the time, so we have that in common.
And say, in some places in Southern Africa, if you wanted to learn the secrets of a certain secret society, you had to do dreadful things which I cannot repeat here. And at one time, in Barotse land, in the west of what is today Zambia, my teacher said, look, how far are you willing to go in order to become one of us? I said, I am willing to go anywhere. He looked at me and he said, listen, educated man, we are tired of people like you. White men come amongst us to milk our minds and then to kill us. We want to be sure that we can trust. And wait, sir. I said, great one, I am willing to do anything. He said, are you? I said, yes. And then they went into a graveyard, and from there they removed the hand of a corpse, dead 2 days, and they brought it and they challenged me to cook it I did so. And these were the peoples who first told me about a race of highly intelligent beings, which they called the Chitauri, the talkers, a race of creatures which look like reptiles, who have ruled the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Through this dreadful act, I was able to gain knowledge which was denied to even the highest Sangomas, because they would not go through the ritual either. This is how secret knowledge is protected in Africa. So, and at one time, let me tell you another thing. Again, in Barotse land, on the border between Angola and North Rhodesia, as it was called, I was brought into a hut, and in the hut was a young woman. She was as black as ebony, and her hair was like a huge black cloud on her head. Her teeth had been sharpened in the Barotse facing until they looked like those of a reptile. And Mutwa was very puzzled. What's this lady doing here? I'm supposed to spend several nights in this hut, so what is she? What is she doing here? Now, Credo Mutwa, being a frightened Zulu, afraid of women but not afraid of wild animals, decided to sleep with his back to the wall, giving the lady a nice clean bed. And on the following day, Credo Mutwa was fined 15 pounds by the local chief because I had refused a sacred gift. I had been supposed to do something very amazing to this lady to show that I was one of the people. That's not. But
why, Credo, have you chosen to reveal this knowledge now to a much, much wider audience?
Mr. David, please, Africa is dying. Africa, is being murdered. And we are sitting like bloody fools. And we don't realize what's being done to our people. I have proof that can stand in any true court of law that the disease called AIDS is a man-made disease. And this disease is going to kill 3/4 of South Africa's black people within the next 10 years. There are wars in Africa which make no sense to me as a black man. Please, when people fight a war, Mr. David, why do they fight? People fight in order to get rid of something that is giving them pain. Whether that something is a tribal chief or a corrupt modern government. They want to fight to remove this burden or to be destroyed by it. That is the idea behind a rebellion. But in Africa, we find wars where a group of rebels challenges a government and tries to fight against it. And then these wars end in the total destruction of that particular country, where neither the rebels nor the government wins anymore. And why? Because you find this force of rebels facing the government, and all of a sudden the rebel army splits into little factions which start fighting each other and not the real enemy. And soon it becomes a situation where everybody is fighting everybody else and the whole thing is getting nowhere. So I say that these wars which are destroying Africa this way are orchestrated by forces from outside Africa. Our peoples need development. Our people need peace in Africa. We are basically a peaceful people. We are not warlike. Don't let historians tell you a lot of rubbish. Africa is not perceived by the people outside here as she really is. One, my people are Zulus, as a tribe famous for warrior exploits for many, many years now. But wait, do you know, sir, that Zulu people actually hated war and didn't love it as historians would have you believe? We Zulu people call war Impi, I-M-P-I, and we call it evil Imbi or Ububi. Now the word Imbi and the word Imbi come from exactly the same root, which means that which is evil. We call copper Itusi, which means the helper, the frightener away of evil spirits. But we call iron Insimbi, which means the evil metal, the metal of war. Now, when a Zulu went to battle, he spiritually prepared himself for fighting. But when he came back from battle, a Zulu would undergo a ceremony of purification, a very, very painful ritual, which lasted for some 7 days before he was even allowed to touch his wife. But wait for this. In England, we have got the lady Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, writing in her diary that her husband, Sir John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, after the terrible Battle of Blenheim, had made love to her 3 times while still wearing his top boots. Wait, sir. Listen to that. Here is a man coming into his tent or whatever it was, with his boots still stinking with the blood of horses and the blood of men, and probably with human flesh still attached to the soles of those boots. Here is this man making love to his wife. What kind of attitude is that? That a man would come smelling of death and destruction to desecrate his wife in pre-torrid sessions? We never did that in Africa. We hated war, and furthermore, our people, the black people of Southern Africa, are accused of having been a male-dominated society. Absolute bloody poppycocks. Zulus were a female-dominated society. And if you want proof of that, ask yourself, who killed King Saga? Who planned Saga's murder? 2 women, kings, Mama and Mkabai, Shaka's aunt, who was the greatest advisor of King Shaka. His mother, Nandi, she used to plan every one of Shaka's military campaigns right down to the last detail. So, everywhere in South Africa, our word for great also means female, but that is something we shall discuss at another time. So, Africa is being measured in a race of people which once founded some of the world's greatest civilizations is being cruelly exterminated, and our politicians are here to be hypnotized as like a little antelope hypnotized by a python. Don't our leaders know what is going on in Africa? I'm going to talk, sir. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to reveal and damn the consequences. I am not a brave man, but it's high time somebody stood up and exposed the conspiracy around Africa and her people.
So let's start looking then at the force that is the common theme through all this history to the present day that's been manipulating these highly malevolent, highly destructive situations. My own research around the world has certainly focused in on the fact that there is a force not of this world, shall we say, that is the common theme. What is your experience and your knowledge of an extraterrestrial involvement in the history of Africa?
One of the most secret stories that was revealed to me is about these beings. This story was revealed to me first in Barotseland, then in the country today called Rwanda, once known as Rwanda Urundi. Then I learned about this story at that time on the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is the story, a story you find throughout Africa. There was once a time when the blue sky was invisible, when the whole world was covered with mist, when you could not see the sun as it is now. You only saw it as a splash of white light moving slowly across the sky. At that time, there was an eternal drizzle every day of the year. At that time, people could not see the stars. People only saw the trees growing, trees which were very, very big. There was no desert at that time, only jungle everywhere where you went. At that time, people were what we call in Zulu, ngubili. A human being was both male and female in one body. And out of the sky, one day came terrible objects. They were like gigantic bows made of huge gleaming gold. They were shaped like bows without strings, and they were bigger than the biggest mountains. They came out of the sky bringing great noise, black smoke, and fire with them. And out of those huge objects came them. At that time, human beings could not speak. We had no gift of language at that time. And people had, however, great mental power. A man would go into the bush and, using the power of his mind, actually call out an animal which he wanted to hunt and kill for his children. And the animal would appear and kneel down before the man, and the man would kill the animal and take it home. But when the Chitauri arrived in Africa, they told our people that they were gods and that they were going to give us human beings great gifts on one condition. We had to worship them and accept them as our creators. Some told our people that they were our elder brothers and that this earth had produced them generations ago. And they said they had come back to the green womb of their mother and that they were going to make us into gods. What they did, they created a very strange pair of caves in the land. They dug 2 caves. In one cave was a green light, in another cave was a red light. And they drove human beings into these caves. And each human being had to choose which cave the human being wanted to go into. And those who went into the green cave came out as women. And those who went into the red cave came out as men. And then the talkers, the Chitauri, told our people that now they were perfect. But the moment the first men saw the first women, a terrible row erupted. The women hated the men because they looked between their legs and they saw what they thought were snakes dangling between the legs of the men. And the men hated the women because they looked on their chests and they saw these big things. What they were, they did not know. And then the Chitauri laughed. It was to them a very, very big joke. And then the Chitauri said, if you serve us, you wretched little human beings, we are going to make you into gods. And the human beings agreed to serve the Chitauri. And the Chitauri gave human beings a second gift, the gift of language. People started talking with their tongues where they had talked with their minds before. And there was a big rubbish starting again, because this man did not know the language of that man. And when this man greeted that man, this man thought that he was being insulted, and so a lot of murder and culpable homicide started taking place all over the world. When our people were given language, they found to their horror that they had lost much of their mental powers. They had paid a terrible price. But the Chitauri were now the masters of human beings. They made them, the human beings, to go into holes in the ground and to mine metal, gold, copper, tin, all kinds of metal. The Chitauri forced our people to mine. And the people were very unhappy because they couldn't cope with the new sexual differences which were there now between men and women. And then, from amongst the the Chitauri came a very good female Chitauri. Her name was Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo. Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo was the senior wife of the terrible chief of the Chitauri, Umbaba Gorontwari Samahongo. She was sorry for human beings, this great reptile lady. She said to the poor people, "Ow, you are unhappy." And the people said, "Yes, great one. We go into the holes every day, we dig the stones and we bring it to the gods. But we are not happy." And my Nzarantwari scratched her scaly chin and began to think and to think. She was terribly ugly. Her eyes were awful, like lights in the darkness. But she had mercy in her heart. And she taught the men and the women how to make love. And she said, "Look, we divided you into males and females. Now this action is going to bring you together." But it did not, because anyone who receives a gift from the Ntwari, the children of the python, is always in trouble. What happened was that when one guy slept with his wife, he didn't find her much, so he went to steal another guy's wife, and there was a big remorse, as we say in Afrikaans, starting. So men started stealing each other's wives and each other's girlfriends, and women started stealing each other's husbands, and there was a big nonsense in the land. And King Umbaba, the terrible lord of the Ntwari, the reptile people, said, "Look what you've done, you stupid old woman. Now these people, they are making such a noise. Listen to all that screaming in the bush. They are busy making love there, and our gold is not being dug, and you are responsible for this." And Nzarantwari thought and thought and thought and thought, and then she got a plan, and she said, "I will make them stop. When they make love to each other, the female is going to get pregnant. And when she is pregnant, the male is going to leave her alone. And that noise in the bush will not be so disturbing to you, my lord." And Umbaba said, "You had better. There is no production yet." And so all the women in the world was pregnant, and Umbaba was furious with his wife. And so it went on and on until one day Nzarantwari activated a black hero called Mweru. And Mweru challenged the great chief of the serpent people to a fight. And he cut off the royal penis of the king of the snake people. And that caused a big war. Mweru ran away. But Umbaba, the terrible chief of the people, caught him and arrested him and brought him to his village. And there, the great chief Gorontwari Umbaba said, "Look, you cut off my thing, and I have replaced it with one made of gold, and I can't make love to my wife anymore. You think too much, you wretched little human being." Now Umbaba had a terrible nail in one of his hands, a claw. And with this claw, he drove the claw into Mweru's nostril, making a terrible hole into his brain, and he started drinking Mweru's brain, and then he threw away the corpse. To this day, we believe that the people, the Chitauri people, they eat human brains. And strangely enough, scientists have found skulls where the human brain has been removed and eaten by someone or something.
Well, hearing you speak here, so many things come to mind. First of all, you're saying that telepathy was the key form of communication before the Chitahuda, the reptilians came.
Yes.
And I guess it's like a muscle. When you use it, it gets more sensitive and more powerful. So the more you use your telepathy, the more powerful your mind got. And then when language came, it almost brought us into this three-dimensional world and disconnected us from that mind power.
Yes.
And it's also interesting that the stories you talk about, the language being given, and then the different languages being given. And of course, that turns up in the Old Testament, in the Bible. It turns up in stories all over the world about the fact that we were divided by language, so we couldn't communicate. And as someone who publishes books, I know today how difficult it is to communicate through books when you've got endless different languages. So it's been a brilliant form of control for a long time.
Yes, sir. Even now here in South Africa, today, sir, black people prefer to speak to each other in English if they belong to different tribes. And they have even, over the many decades, black youth have even created a lingua franca of their own, which we call Tsotsi language, which is a mixture of African words and Afrikaans words. They do this in order to bridge the incredible language gap which exists between black people in South Africa. Let me show you an amusing thing, how different languages are. The language of the Xhosa people of the Eastern Cape is very similar to Zulu, but certain important words in the Zulu language, good words, are viewed as obscenities by the Xhosa people. For example, in the language of the Zulus, an ancestral spirit is called Idlos. But if you use that word to a Xhosa, he says you are using a dirty word, because to them, Idlos means sexual desire. And in the language of the Zulus, meal, maize meal, is known as impu. But in the language of the Bapedis, maize meal is called bupi. And if a Zulu uses the word impupu in front of a Bapedi woman, he feels that he has insulted her, because in the Bapedi language, impupu means a woman's sexual organ. And in the language of the Mashonas, in the language of the Zulus, a mother is called mama. If I say my mother, I say mama wabi. But in the language of the Mashona, the people of Eastern Zimbabwe, the word mama means to sit down and have a crack. So one day when I said to my Mashona host, ngikhumbule umama, which in Zulu is, I remember my mother, I'm missing my mother, the Mashona gentleman immediately took me and directed me to his Hitler scene at the back of his house. Because in the Mashona way, mother is mine, not mine. So you see this terrible difficulty, this subtle problem of language is a very big obstacle to communication in Africa. So we designed languages. There's another language called Fanagalo, which is a lingua franca consisting of African words as well as nonsense words and Zulu words, which was used a lot in the mines in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So, to bridge this great language gap, we have created artificial languages in Africa. But today, English is the preferred language of communication. Some say we should learn French, also another language of communication in Africa.
Some of, the problems of language can be funny, but it is the same situation, the divide and rule, that is actually, in other expressions, created this tremendous turmoil in Africa and other places in the world. And we're looking, from my research, and staggeringly hearing you talk, you're saying exactly the same as I've come across. It's incredible confirmation that a reptilian race from another world has been behind the manipulation of humanity for a very, very long time. Now, what do these Chitahuli actually look like, the reptiles?
I'm not a good artist.
You're better than me, that's for sure.
But this is how we behave the Chitahuli look like. They were created in this. You see, sir, you white people say that there are alien beings on this earth. No, you are wrong. The earth in which we live has produced 24 different races during its long existence. Please, this is how a Chitahuli looks like. It stands about 11 feet high. It is a very slender being which seems not to have a bone structure. Its fingers have no joints. They are more as if the bones in here were flexible. Some of the Chitauri have got 3 claws with a thumb. Some have got 6 claws with a thumb. And some of the Chitauris have got horns on their heads. And what surprises me is this. Some film producers, like the producers who make the film Star Wars, often show creatures in their films which actually exist, which even the most uneducated of Africans who knows this Chitauli can identify. For example, in the new Star Wars film, what is it called? Star Wars or something like that. There is a creature who amazes me called Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a red and black being with a ring of small horns right round his head. That is exactly what the Chitahuli look like. Some have got ordinary heads without any horns on their heads. These are the lesser Chitauli. But the royal Chitauli have got a ring of sharp horns all around their heads. And the very high Chitauli, like their king, Mubaba Samahongo, they have got very long horns which grow this way. Not that way like a bull, but this way like certain antelopes. Now, I just wonder where these film producers get their information from. And in what one strange feeling which my student called me to come and watch. There is a thing called Stargate 2.
Mm-hmm.
And in that film, there was a creature, a very slimy, cream-colored creature with heavy wrinkles on its face. It was a spitting likeness of Mubaba Samahongo, the terrible emperor of the Chitauri.
Well, clearly there's a tremendous amount of knowledge of what's been going on and what is going on, which comes out symbolically through films and areas of communication like Hollywood. But the thing that I'm totally stunned the more I talk to you about this is because I've been all over the world having people give me descriptions of seeing reptilian type figures, particularly people in positions of power in the world, changing into a reptilian figure and coming back again. And what they describe seeing is exactly what the knowledge of ancient Africa talks about seeing. We're talking about the same people there, which is an astonishing confirmation. And the eyes is something that keeps coming up being described. Tell me about the eyes of the Chitahuri.
Say, a warrior Chitauri has got eyes like a snake. These eyes are yellowish with split pupils, and they glow in darkness. So if a Chitauri, a warrior Chitauri, one of the lesser classes, is hiding in a cave, you can see its eyes burning. But a royal Chitauri has got 3 eyes. It's got the yellow eyes, which glow in a strange, almost ice-like way, like jewels, like certain types of yellow jewels. And then they have got an eye in the center of their foreheads, an eye which doesn't close up down like a normal eye does, but which closes from side to side and which opens this way. Now, this eye of the Chitauri is the eye that kills, because it can knock a man down just by the fire, the glare that comes out of it.
Is this where the constant recurring theme of the evil eye comes from?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, Mubaba, the emperor of the Chitauri, who is said to be still alive today, Mubaba has got a central eye. His other 2 eyes were stitched shut by a jealous wife. But his killing eye, the Samahongo, the terrible red eye, open. He can even open it like this. Mr. David, I would like to share a little thing with you. It is this. The best way to protect an evil thing is to deny its existence. And if you talk about things such as the Chitauri, if you talk about things such as the Mandinda, there are many people who say to you, rubbish, this thing does not exist. Now, in this way, this great evil is protected by being denied. One day in my long travels through the world, I was in New York, in that place called Harlem, and I saw a graffiti on a wall along a passage, and the graffiti was, "There is no such a thing as the mafia, and we will kill any asshole who says that there is." In this, again and again, sir, in America, people deny the existence of the mafia. And by denying it, actually protect it wittingly or unwittingly. There are those who deny that a national and international conspiracy exists. They deny it ferociously. But by denying it, they are actually assisting it and actually protecting it. We must stop denying the existence of these things. We must stop saying that there are no Chitauri, that there are no aliens, that there are no Illuminati. There are. I could tell you for hours. For example, do you know what we Zulu people call a person? A very, very clever person. A very, very wise person. A person who has received light from God. We call him umkhanyiselwa. In other words, the illuminated one. Khanyisa means to light up something. And umkhanyiselwa is somebody who has been lighted up by the gods. So you say Illuminati, I say umkhanyiselwa. It's the same thing.
And my research very clearly, and again, you're right, there's tremendous denial of this is the fact. Even among conspiracy researchers, there's tremendous denial that the Chitahuli, the reptilians, and the Illuminati are actually the same thing.
Exactly, sir. Because amongst my people, we say that when two Chitauri are challenging each other for power, and they must fight a duel with their terrible eyes, they start glowing like fishes deep in the sea. And the faster they glow, the angrier they are said to be. Now that is why there are certain parts of Africa where people are advised not to walk at night, because that is where the Chitauri often fight. And one of these parts of Africa, sir, is a remarkable place called the Mountains of the Round Rocks, Matobo, wrongly pronounced Matopo, in Zimbabwe. These hills are really not remarkable in themselves. These hills are said to be the one place in Africa where the Chitauri have been seen. And these hills is where Cecil John Rhodes lies buried, but there is more. You must visit this place at one time. Amongst the rocks on the Matopo Mountains, you find a species of lizard which you don't find anywhere in Africa or the world. A species of lizard which responds to the call of a human being.